This is Dr.T Vara Lakshmi discussing you about the production function and the basic elements of the production function under the concept of business economics and financial analysis. So here, the production function. So before going to see what is the production function, let us have the discussion on what is a production. So production is any activity that creates value is called as the production. So in other words, transforming the inputs into the useful outputs is called as the production. So for example, transforming any plastic into the pen, chair, etc. is also an activity of production. So transforming the iron into iron ores, iron bars. So like this, any product has to produce, or that may be a good or a service. It must have some inputs. So same thing which I am teaching you or explaining you something that I have taken some inputs of the knowledge regarding the particular topic and I am discussing with you. So which means I am converting the inputs of my knowledge and everything into the output of a particular conceptual sharing. So that is the called as the production. So here the natural resources of the natural resources what we have, like the land, raw materials, etc. Naturally what we will get, as well as these artificial elements, that is capital goods, like whatever we are taking then another raw elements or the any additional elements, as well as these human resources like the labor, employees, etc. And all these are all converting into but based on the certain steps and procedures, and finally we are all able to produce this goods. So that activity is called as this production. So the production, whatever this productional activity is going on, that productional activity will be based on certain elements. That relationship between the productional elements to the productional quantity output is called as the production function. Especially when the marketer has identified a demand and estimated the demand based on this demand forecasting techniques, then his next step is to produce the particular product. While producing this particular product, he has to create a relationship between the inputs to the output. That is, for example, if a product is producing, what is that product and what kind of the inputs that are using to produce that product, and the relationship between that inputs to the output. That mathematical relationship between the inputs and outputs is called as the production function. So this technical relationships between the inputs and outputs will be measures or will be denotes with a letter of the Q, that is quantity of the products which is going to be producing is depends on the functioning of the inputs, that is land, labor, capital, technology, any other machineries. These are all will be called as the inputs. So based on the functioning of these inputs only, the expected output will be depends. That expression between the inputs and outputs is called as the production function. So always the inputs variations and the relationship between the inputs and outputs only can give the control to the manufacturer over the production of a particular product. So that is the importance of this production function for every manager while applying the economy elements to the production of a particular product. Once if we see the factors which are affecting the productional function is obviously the inputs. So all that inputs will be called as the factors of the production function. For example, if the land is of 1 acre land is there, and the farmer is able to produce 10 bags of the rice. Then, if the land is going to be increasing by 2 acres, 1 acre to the 2 acres, then there is a chance of increasing that 10 bags of rice to 22 bags might be possible. So which means all this production output, that is the output of 10 bags or the 22 bags, is based on the functioning of these particular inputs like the land. Or in 1 acre, previously only 10 people were working in that particular 1 acre, and 10 bags were produced, and in the same acre if 12 people works effectively and they are all effectively doing the soilings, seeding, harvesting, everything they are all doing effectively, and they are able to reduce the wastages, then there is a chance of more than 10 bags, that is 12 bags of rice production in these elements, which means the labor is also is playing a key role in the production function. Not only that one, the additional elements. So, for example, same in this 1 acre of the land, if the person is able to introduce the new technological elements or the new technological machineries for the cropping of that particular rice and packing of that rice and everything, they can reduce the labor, and the machineries, with the help of the machineries, they can do that work in a less span of time. So which means even the technological elements and additional substitutable products and any additional products to the production and enterprises, markets, conditions, etc. is also has its impact on the production factors. The next one, not only this land, labor and enterprise, capital is also a key factor. If the farmer is able to invest more amount, that is in the case of getting good quality of the seeds, then there is a chance of getting more harvest or more bags of the rice production. If he is unable to invest that much of the capital, obviously the production might quantity output might also be reduces, which means, so not only these four, this includes this technology and other elements or the supportive elements for the production again. So, but mainly these four factors will have the more impact on the production of a product. So that's why the factors of the production function includes the land, labor, enterprise, capital, raw materials, technology, availability of the substitutable products, availability of the components, additional components, availability of the indirect material to the productions, so etc. is also plays a vital role in the successful of the production function. So that's why every minutiae is better to think about what are the important factors of his productional elements and what is the relationship between these inputs to the outputs. He has to plan. If without that plan, there is no chance of maximizing the productional output, because the application of the economy on the production itself is to give the to get the maximum returns by the producer. So if the producer has to get the maximum returns, obviously he need to take care of the productional activities of that producer. So that's why this production function plays a key role in getting of the maximum returns. Let's have the discussion on the basic terminology which is using in the productional function, that is the total product, marginal product and average product. So that will be denotes with TP, MP and AP. So the total product means the total number of products which were produced in a particular time period with the given inputs by the producer is called as the total products. The next level, first level to the next level of the outputs, the increased number of the products is called as the marginal products. Then the average of the inputs to the outputs is called as the average production. For example, if 1 acre land is in 1 acre land, in 1 acre land, if they are able to produce 10 bags of the rice, then that is called as the total production. The next time when they were harvesting in the same 1 acre, if they are able to produce 12 bags of the rice, then the marginal production is increased to 2 bags. 2 bags of the marginal production. On an average, so here he is producing 10 bags, here he is producing 12 bags. So if he takes 2 acres of that one, if they are able to produce 25 bags of that one, then we can say that 25 by 2 means 12.5 bags of the rice they are all able to produce on an average in a particular 1 acre of the land. So that is the difference between the total production, marginal production and average production. The most frequent terminology which uses in the production function by the producer. The relationship between the total production, average production and the marginal production is total production is equals to average production into inputs. Inputting factor like labor, land, etc. The sum of the or the variations of the one level of the output to the another level of the output is called as the marginal production. Once if we observe in this particular table, quantity of the labor is 1 and the quantity of the capital invested is 10. At that time, if they are able to produce the total production of the 4, then it is the base thing. So that's why the average production is 4 and marginal product is also 4. And if the quantity of the labor is increased to 2 and quantity of the capital is the same, the quantity of the capital in all the cases is same, but if the labor is increased to 2, then the total output might be increases to 10. So the difference between these two, 4 and 10 is 6. So that is called as the marginal production. And this total production 10 is produced by 2 labor means on an average each labor is produced 5 number of products. That is the average product is 5. And the same way, if the labor is increased by 3, then the total production is increased to 21. So that is 11 number of marginal products is increased, where 21 divided by 3, that is average, on an average, each labor has produced 7 number of products. So this is a chart which is showing the relationship between the total production, marginal production and average production of a particular product with a given inputs. So here the 2 types of the inputs we are all observing, that is the labor and capital. And there too, where the capital remains constant, only one variable or one input is varying, that is called as the labor. It is also called as the one variable production function. If 2 changes, then that might be 2 variable production function. If all the inputs changes, then multiple variable production function. So we can say these are all the types of the production functions. Anyhow, in the due course, we'll have the discussion on that elements. In the same way, once if we observe the marginal production of the products from 1 to up to this 4 labor, it is increasing. 4 to 6, 11 to 19, it is increasing. Then that stage is called as increasing returns to the variable factor. That variable factor is labor here. So if the number of up to the 4 number of the labor it is increased and the marginal production is also increased, then that situation, that stage of the production is called as increasing returns to the variable factor. Once if we see this next stage, even if the more number of the labor is increasing, the same land, same capital if they are investing, though no need of that one. If the number of people increases, the maximum capacity levels, there is a chance of reducing this marginal rate. So marginal production rate might be reduces. That situation is called as diminishing returns to the variable factor. And if it leads to the -1, then it will be called as negative returns to the variable factor. So like this, so there will be 3 stages, that is increasing returns to scale, diminishing returns to scale, negative returns to the scale. So based on this marginal production, based on the marginal production, we can estimate the value of the productional elements. So that is about the basic terminology which are using in the production function, that is total production, average production and marginal production. Next thing is production function and its types. So before going to discussing this production function and its types, it is better to understand the various kinds of the production functions. That is based on anyhow the production function means the relationship between the inputs to the outputs. Based on the changing variables in the inputs, the production function kinds will be either one variable production function, two variable production function or multi-variable production function. So suppose if the production function Q is the function of the land, labor, technology and capital. Assumes that a producer depends on these four factors. If the land is changing and the remaining are all constant, then that kind of the production function is called as the one variable production function. The same producer is changing the quantity of the land which he is using as well as the number of the labor which he is using, but he is using the same technology and the same capital, then we can say that the producer is following the two variable production function. But instead of this land, labor, same capital is also changing, only the technology is constant, then we can say that three variable production function. If all the factors in this one are all changing, then we can say that it is a multi-variable production function, which means the number of the inputs that are changing will be called as a variable. The number of the inputs which are become constant is called as the fixed. Based on the changing variables, then it will be called as one variable, two variable or multi-variable production functions. So in this example, the units of the land of 10 acres is constant and the units of the labor of 1, 0, 1, 2, 3 up to this one, it is going to be increasing, and accordingly what is changes in this total production, average production and the marginal production and the stages in that one is clearly plotted in this table. Here in this production function with the two variable, capital is changing and variable combinations of the labors is also changing. So if capital is of one input and the labor of 10, and if they are expecting the third column, they can say that's total production. So in the first element, if one capital and 10 labors are all there, so 10 might be this one, and one capital 14 members means there might be a 20 number of this one. So like this, they can as a producer under the productional function, he can plot easily the different combination of the capitals and the labor as well as the expected total production, average production and marginal production. If any two input factors will be changes, then it will be called as the production function with two variables. So next concept is about the types of the productional functions. So based on the kinds of the productional function and the variables that are changing in the production function, it is categorized into 6 productional functions. Apart from this one, Cobb-Douglas production function is also there. We'll later and separately have the discussion about the Cobb-Douglas production function. So in these production functions, fixed portion of the production function, variable portion of the production function, linear homogeneous production function, constant elasticity of the substitutional production function, short-term production function and long-term production function. It's like this, 6 types of the production functions are all there. So let's have the discussion on each and every production function. What is the basis of that productional function separately? The first type of the productional function is fixed portion of the productional function. So which means the combination of the inputs is fixed for the expected outputs. Let us say the fixed factors like land, labor, raw materials which are using for the productional are fixed for the quantity of an output, and these production factors cannot be substituted for the other factors. So the labor may not be substitutable by the other machineries. The raw material, same kind of the raw material the manufacturer is using, and the same labor they is using, same land only he is using, and he is using that combination of that these three inputs for the various productional output levels. The nothing is substituting and the everything is fixed. Then that kind of the productional functions will be called as fixed portion of the productional function. We can't say that entire productional element is a fixed portion, but a part of the productional elements might be fixed. For example, a Coca-Cola factory is manufacturing the bottles and filling the bottles. At the stage of this manufacturing the bottles, some up to certain stages it might be fixed, that is using of the glass or the plastic, and the shape of that bottles, everything might be fixed, and the machineries, technology, capital, etc. might be fixed up to certain levels. So up to that productional function, they can say that fixed portion of the productional function. So here in this graphical, if we see two units of the capital and 3 labor will aid the 100 number of the output, and if the capital is increased to 5 and labor is increased to 6, then there is a chance of expecting 300 number of the output, and the capital is increases to 7 units and the labor increases to 9 numbers, and there is a chances of getting 500 number of output. So this is the level of outputs for the given combination of inputs which are fixed one, then that is called as fixed portion of productional function. The next kind of the productional function is variable portion of the productional function, which means the combination of inputs are changes with the closed substitutes. So let us say the labor might be replaces with the machineries. One kind of the technology might be replaces with another kind of this technology. Somehow the inputs will be changes with one elements to the another elements, and that's way if we observe that it implies the ratio of the factors of the productions between two substitutable inputs in the productional factors. So here the combination of factors can be used to produce the given utility. So that's way this factor can be substitutable with one another, and a linear, we can't see this standard number of these outputs, and always there's a combination of the capital plus labor. So capital might be reduces and the number of the labor increases up to this level, one kind of the outputs, and the capital is up to this level, and if it is reduces to here and it is replaces with the labor and 160 number of the units. So that is the combination of one elements to the another elements, and substitutable elements might give the different levels of the expected outputs. So that kind of the productional function is called as the variable portion of the productional function. The next third type of the productional function is linear or homogeneous productional function. It implies that with a proportionate change in all the factors of the production, the output also increases in the same proportionate. Such as, let us say, if there is a 10% increase in the inputs, like the land, labor, etc., might increase the 10% increase in the quantity output of the production. So they are not discussing about, they are not saying about the fixed inputs or the variable inputs. Whatever the kind of the inputs it is, the proportionate change in the inputs and its relation to the proportionate change in the outputs. So that if that proportionate change in the input levels are equivalent to the change in the quantity expected levels, then we can say that linear and that too homogeneous inputs to the expected output. So that is called as the linear homogeneous productional function. Here the inputs are, some might be fixed and some might be variable. And here due to capital and the labor are somehow it is fixed, as well as some are going to be variable. Some other elements are like technology might be variable, and these two combinations will lead to the different levels of the outputs like 50, 70. So if the number of the capitals that is inputs, capital and the labor, if the proportionate of the changes in the capital will lead to the increasing in the output levels are also. So here is also the capital and the labor are all increasing, the output levels are also increasing. So that steady growth of the inputs and as well as the reflection of that growth of the inputs on the outputs, if they plots in any graphical representation or tabular representation, that kind of the production function will be called as the linear homogeneous productional function. The next kind of the productional function is constant elasticity of substitution. So it implies that any change in the input factor results in the constant change in the output. So for example, if one place 1 acre of land, if a producer is produced 20 bags of the rice, same labor, same technology, but in the other place the 1 acre he has taken, totally input is replaced with another place, and there is another level of the output he can expect. So that kind of the any changes in the one particular elements and its impact on the quantity output, if any mathematical expression if is expressive, then that kind of the productional function is called as constant elasticity of substitution. So that is, if one input is changed with another input, how it is going to be impacting the quantity of the output is going to be plotting in a graphically. So here, once if we observe, so x1 is a one input factor and x2 is another input factor, and if it is changes with another input, so they're completely the yielding might be 5, and if it is replaced with another elements, so here is also instead of 7 x2 inputs, 7 x1 inputs are all replaced, then the yielding might be 7. That is complete substituting of one particular input with another particular input, and its relationship to the quantity output is called as the constant elasticity of the substitution. Next and very important thing to know about the production function is short-term production function. That is also called as the law of variable proportionate. To better understanding of this short-term production function, so let us discuss about the diminishing returns. So diminishing returns means the returns up to the starting stage if the combination of the inputs are all changing, and generally there is a growth we can expect in the market. The total production will be increases, average production increases, marginal production will be also be increases. But if it reaches to the peak stages and up to that one, marginal production will become constant, and it will marginal production, there is a chance of reduction in the marginal production. So best example, if 1 acre land and different combinations of the labors, technology, seeds and water resources, drip irrigation, etc. If the inputs are all keep on changing, then there is a chance of increasing the more number of productional output. In 1 acre, a maximum 50 bags of the rice can be produced at different combination of the inputs. Then that first stage of increasing returns to scale. Afterwards, even if the number of the labor increases, whatever it increases, unless and until the land increases, there is no chance of getting the maximum output. So which means Here, if the same occur, if the number of the people are introducing, then there is a chance of reducing that marginal production. Sometimes it may goes to the negative also, and sometimes average production per labor might also be reduces because of the gang composition. So the people will generally think that he will works, he will take care of this crop, and the other person gets relaxed. The same person has the same thinking power, and nobody will takes care about that cropping or the yielding or productional elements. That might lead to the negative or the reduction of the average production also. So simply if the number of the people are increases, then there is a average production reduction might also be possible. So that is called as the diminishing returns. Generally, if the productional function at the initial stages, the people will more concentrate on the combination of the inputs, combination of this inputs, like how to replace the raw material with another raw material, labor gang composition with another gang composition, technological changes. So these adjustments are only they'll think, and they won't think about the fixed elements like land, mortgages, etc. So that one year span of time period, the combination of the inputs and its relation is called as the short-term productional function. So generally it will be called as the law of variable proportionate, because most of the inputs will be changes than the constant elements. So here, once if we observe, the capital might be constant because it is capital is the long term investment factor. The labor will be changes. So because that is the short term and variable proportionate. So with this labor input, the total output will be changes, and marginal productions is going to be increasing up to 29. Up to 29 it will be increases, and average production is also be increased up to 20. The average production is also increased. Then later it has started diminishing because the same capital, even though the number of the labor all increased, same marginal production, and it is going to be reducing. And in the short term, what happens is they will more concentrate on the least cost combination of the variable proportions than the fixed ones. That is that kind of the productional function. That kind of the productional function is called as the short-term productional function. Then, in the if it goes on long run, if it is 2-3 years, then the people won't think about the variable proportions. That is, they don't want to change the quality of the goods, because already they came to know the best material to use that product, best labor who works effectively. Everything that is fixed, variable things will be fixed. They have to think about the changing of the fixed element, that is long-term elements. That is called as the long-term productional function, that is law of returns to scale. Now they have to think about the increasing or expansion of this number of acres, and as well as the increasing of the business activities, number of productional units, etc. has to think by the producer. If they gives that information in a mathematical expression, then that is called as long-term productional function. So in the long run, how much of capital they wants to increase, how much of land they wants to increase, that is long-term elements they have to concentrate than the short-term variable inputs. So instead of the fixed inputs, they have to instead of the variable inputs, they have to concentrate on fixed elements in the long-term production function. In the short-term production function, they will more concentrate on the variable change of the inputs than the long-term elements. So that is the difference between the short-term to the long-term. So here is also the labor has to change, as well as the capital also has to change to get the maximum returns. And this graphical representation will give the clear description about the short-term marginal cost will be changes instantly, along with this short-term average cost. When compared to this one long-term, it will take some time to change this long-term average cost and long-term marginal cost. It will take some time when compared to the short-term marginal cost. So that is the relationship between the short-term productional function to the long-term productional function. So that's about the various kinds of the productional functions and the basic terminology related to the productional and productional function. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.